Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to this week's episode of Walking 90. I'm your host, as always, Elliot Barr. Sorry for hesitating there for a second. I just got a weird text from my wife. But joining us on the show is my main man, Chip, who is still awaiting his baby. I think your baby is now in extra time, Chip. Like we're like
Not
90 plus.
not quite, but it feels like we're getting close to it.
Yeah, we're like 95 plus. We're in the strange West Coast time. Um, also joining us down below is my good friend Kyle Carr, who is having to not make sure that our show gets shadow banned by Disney and the overlords over there because Sterling is up and watching Mickey Mouse. How are you doing, friend?
I am good otherwise. Yeah, I'm home with both the boys. So right now the biggest thing is make sure one stays asleep and the other doesn't get us copyrighted.
Oh, there you go. And last but not least, the main reason why Kyle decided to do this show today to not only be a fanboy, but to ask some very dear questions about the latest club coming into USL League One. It's Mr. Peter Moore joining us on the show. How are you doing, sir?
I am very well, gentlemen. How are you guys?
Great.
Cannot complain. Cannot complain. A lot of the crazy news is starting to drop off of USL League One from trades and coaches and stuff like that. But outside of that, I'm good.
But no, it's a huge honor, obviously, with the new Santa Barbara FC joining USL League One, the latest expansion that is coming in 2024. So it's going to be our second California team joining Central Valley Fuego. So we are thrilled to have Peter on. So I guess we can start with the first question in what made you interested in being involved with Santa Barbara in this whole process in the first place?
Well, when I left Liverpool at the end of my contract, which was in late 2020, my wife and I we have 6 kids between us, and we were able to pick and choose where we wanted to live. She had worked previously for Sonos, who you're all aware of, great music company, and right here in Santa Barbara. So we put down roots here. I'm in Montecito in the Santa Barbara Hills, and it wasn't very long after me living here, getting a feel for the soccer community, for the number of players here, both at youth and adult level, boys and girls, men and women, the powerhouse that is UCSB and the national annual national rankings that they are able to attain. And USL reached out shortly thereafter and said, look, we realize you're here and we'd love to chat with you because we've been eyeing Santa Barbara as an expansion area for quite some time now. So we sat down, this is probably about 8 months ago now, and sat down and we figured out how we could bring this to bear. We were hoping at first to be able to join USL League One for the 2023 season. A lot of moving parts, as you might imagine, building a club from scratch, which we've been able to do. And all of that culminated in certainly the announcement launch, which was on July 12th in downtown Santa Barbara. And we were able to let the world know our intent is to commence play in March of 2024 for men's and women's that year here in Santa Barbara under the name of Santa Barbara Sky FC.
Yeah, that announcement definitely had a lot of us thrown for a loop. I think pretty much everyone online thought it was going to be one Knoxville because of the sunset imagery, which they use a lot. And then the same day there was news leak that it was that New Orleans was going to have a team. So everyone was like, man, is it New Orleans? Is it Knoxville? Like, who's it going to be? Then all of a sudden it was Santa Barbara Sky. And it's like, whoa, did not see that one coming. And it was a super cool announcement, especially hearing your involvement. I think it definitely gives a lot of legitimacy to the league. I guess the American soccer structure is a little bit odd when you look at it compared to other countries. So we have 3 different tier 3 leagues in the United States between USL League One, NISA, and MLS Next. What was attractive about USL's League One in comparison to the other D3 markets, or did you even consider the other Division 3 leagues in the country for your team?
Yeah, I have lived here in the U.S. for the best part of 40 years, and football has been part of my life, both professionally and personally. Coming over in the 70s and playing and coaching in the Midwest, and reminiscing back how hard it was then to even go find a game. Certainly nothing on television, pre-internet. You had no idea where the scores were. I, of course, worked for Reebok and helped MLS get going in my role as head of global sports marketing. So, not only watched with great interest as a fan, but also I was chairman of the Soccer Industry Council of America in the 90s, which was a sporting goods association, trade association, if you will, that was tasked with growing the sport here. And that's 25 years ago. So I guess my answer to this, I'm so familiar with the progression over decades, before you guys were all born, of where this sport has been since the mid 70s and how it's progressed. And so when you look at a market, if you will, like Santa Barbara, you look at the total addressable market, you think where the sweet spot would be, and you look at where you position yourselves in a league. MLS has already got 2 franchises down the road here in Los Angeles, obviously the LA Galaxy and LAFC, and then up in the Bay Area where I used to live and would go watch the Earthquakes play. And so the Central Coast here was crying out for a team that could compete. Be a little bit of a stretch too far for us as regards the positioning, the total addressable market, the size of the stadiums that we could get, the attendance that we could get. League One felt perfect. And so my conversations in those days with Justin Papadakis, the chief operating officer, Dan Holman, who runs all of the expansion facility, and the league has done a great job in helping us think through all of our positioning, our financials, what we need to do, how we're going to be successful, the blocking and tackling, if I can mix my sports analogies up, of what it takes to build a team from scratch. I mean, from a clean sheet of paper in October of last year, we have obviously built Santa Barbara Sky Football Club. And long-term objectives is to, for me anyway, is simple, is that I want every kid on the Central Coast that kicks a ball waking up every morning wanting to play for Santa Barbara Sky FC, not for the Galaxy or LAFC or the Earthquakes.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to mention, like with that, obviously you mentioned the University of California, Santa Barbara being right there. You think that's going to be a big motivating factor as well with having the USLW, like having the USL women's team as well, like having that pipeline right there? That's an advantage that most other teams have that. Most other teams don't have that. You do.
Yeah, I mean, UCSB. I mean, one of the things that I was well aware of. I used to be a soccer shoe salesman here in the early '80s, and would come and visit the Gauchos and try and sell them Patrick boots, which was my job during that period. This is very much a soccer town, and I told the story at the launch of my first ever time here in Santa Barbara, probably 1982, summer, 40 years ago, driving my Toyota Camry from Long Beach as a commission sales rep selling shoes. Arrived in a local sports retailer. What you used to do in those days, go to the phone box, look at the yellow pages for sporting goods retailers, get your map book out and figure out where those retailers were. And Copeland Sports was a big multi-chain retailer, multi-store retailer here. And even then, 40 years ago, I wandered in there with my Patrick samples, and the owner, Jim Copeland, says, look, I don't know much about your product. What I do know is Santa Barbara is a soccer town. And a lot of that comes out of American football not being played at UCSB since 1987, I believe. And that's allowed both soccer and basketball to flourish from an athletic department focus and perspective. And this is very much a very diverse community as well. The Hispanic community has been here, the deep roots, as you might imagine. And the adult leagues are well established. And the overall league structure here for club soccer is deep and decades old. And so it all came together very much for me that yes, a big addressable market for people to come to the games. And to your point, equally importantly, I think, is that the talent pool coming out of UCSB, maybe even coming out of Santa Barbara City College, a junior college here, the high school system, the Santa Barbara Soccer Club, nearly 4,000 registered players playing club soccer at a high level. You hope you can put a good chunk of Santa Barbarians on the pitch playing for their hometown team.
Yeah. Peter, I want to ask you this question. It just kind of going back to where it all started from you. You were born and raised in Liverpool. Do you ever think, like, if you could go back and talk to 7-8-year-old Peter, it'd be like, hey, when you get to this age, you're gonna not only be an owner of Liverpool, you're gonna help bring a Premier League title, you're gonna help bring a World Cup, you're gonna help bring a FIFA World Cup, Cup, and then you're also gonna own a team in America. Do you ever think like how you were then to now? Like, do you ever think about the journey you've been on?
No, I absolutely think about the journey a bit on, and you know, it's I've been so fortunate. Life, you know, as all of the viewers will understand, takes twists and turns. You've got decisions to make. You make your own bed sometimes by the way you apply yourself, and you know, whether it's in school or on the football pitch, in life in general. And you know, my Liverpudlian upbringing, I often you know, credit to where I am today. And in fact, couple of years ago in Liverpool, I did a TED talk. You'll find it on YouTube about the power of what's known as Scousness. Somebody from Liverpool is a Scouser, and we can all do that. Not only me, but everybody in the world can look back at their roots and say, how did I get here, and how am I who I am today, and what has created and caused and nurtured that. And so for me, I look back, and born and bred in Liverpool, we have a particular personality. Everybody relates to the Beatles, that kind of cheekiness and if you will, that somewhat extroverted personality, and certainly that's me. I grew up in a pub. My dad put me to work behind the bar at an early age that I won't disclose because it's probably illegal, but had me helping him out. He needed a rest every evening, and when I come home from school, I would certainly you know, work behind the bar for a couple of hours. And I'm a physical education teacher, so the roots of that are very much convincing 35 boys 8 times a day to get out and do something they probably don't want to do in the Welsh Hills in a snowstorm. And so you bring all of that together from the perspective of how you got to where you are today. And it's always good to look back. You know, I stand on the shoulders of giants. I stand on the shoulders of people in Liverpool, my parents, my siblings, all of whom have helped me, people I've worked with, my PE teacher who made me wanted to be a PE teacher. But in answer to your question, would you ever dream at that age that you know, for the club that I've supported since I was 4 years of age, when my dad took me to Anfield in 1959 to watch them play against Leyton Orient in the second division? Of course not. You know, you dream of playing for Liverpool. Everybody does, and I, like millions of others, dreamt that, and I, like millions of others, we're not going to play for Liverpool. But one of the things you did, you worked hard on the pitch. You trained hard. You learned the power of being on a team and pulling hard for everybody, and the esprit de corps and the camaraderie that is generated from that. So life has those lessons along the way. You either embrace them and grasp them and work on them, or you let them pass you by. And I've been fortunate enough to, you know, have decisions and beats in my life that have gone my way. And here I sit in one of the most beautiful places on earth in Santa Barbara, California, and having done 3 years, and as you can see there, the Club World Cup with Virgil van Dijk, having had all of those experiences on the pitch with the team, but equally importantly, spending 3.5 years as I did in bringing the fans and this massive global football club closer together, the community, my own personal charity in Liverpool, giving back to the people who gave me so much, the ability to engage with the civic and commercial people of Liverpool. When Liverpool play at home in Liverpool, it is a big deal in that city. And so we do everything that we could as a football club to help the city grow commercially. And it's still a tough city. It still has some very impoverished areas in it. And it was always our goal, still is, I'm sure, of the club, to bring in revenue and people and tourists and all of the things. And what we would learn is they would come for the football and love it, and then come back for the city. And so from that perspective, that's what life creates for you. And it's entirely up to you most of the time, whether you grasp it and work on it and, you know, take the bull by the horns, as they would say, and run with it. And I've been very fortunate that I've made the right decisions with support from a lot of people, from friends and family and my managers, and people who believed in me to give me a job at Patrick and at Reebok and at Sega and at Xbox and at EA and at Liverpool Football Club and now at Unity. I mean, that's 45 years of my working life.
Right. Absolutely. So I want to actually, this is another question, because I got to imagine, you know, we all cover our own teams, but we also try to find the balance of being a fan, but being neutral in our journalism, how we talk about our teams. When Liverpool is making that run during the pandemic season of winning the Premier League? Because granted, the year before that, you guys won the Champions League, and obviously here in this picture, the FIFA World Club Cup. But you guys have done that before, but winning the Premier League, which hasn't happened in an extended period of time. Did you ever find yourself just sitting there and like, yo, this is really going to happen? And when was that moment for you when you realized, oh, this is going to happen?
I mean, it's a great question. Yeah, and of course, the final end of it was disappointing that it ended in COVID, and when we had never won the Premier League. Now we won the league, what was known previously as the First Division, before the Premier League was founded in 1992. We'd won the league 18 times, but the Premier League in the format since 1992, Liverpool until that season you're referring to, had never won it. Interestingly, you look at that photograph there of me in Qatar. That's Doha. That's Virgil van Dijk, obviously, with the FIFA Club World Cup. We flew back 2 days later. It may have even been the following day. And we were playing Leicester City away. It's what's known in England as Boxing Day, which is the day after Christmas. And Leicester, during that period, were pushing hard. And they were either second or third. And we're within 5 or 6 points of us if they'd have won that night at the King Power Stadium. And I can tell you, you need to go, if you don't remember the game, go look at it. I mean, we're coming back off a really a tough trip to the Middle East, came back. I probably had 2 days training. I'm in the office, obviously, not training. And we went away to Leicester on a night game, and tremendous amount of focus on that game because Leicester, the Jamie Vardy, James Maddison, that type of Kasper Schmeichel in goal. And we're winning 1-0, but we're taking a lot of pressure. And again, this is December 26th of a season that ends in May the following year. And, we were still unbeaten to this moment. And we were absorbing the pressure and playing extremely well. We got a penalty. And my wife was with me. It was a cold December, middle of England night. And I turned to my wife because James Milner is walking up to take the penalty. And I said, if he puts this away, we win the league. And that was the moment. Now, a lot of people will go to a game later on against Manchester United, where, if you recall, we won 2-1, Mohamed Salah with that goal in the last minute, running the length of the pitch and, out-muscling Daniel James, blah, blah, blah. But for me, in answer to your question, the moment that James Milner's penalty hit the back of the net on December the 26th, as far as I was concerned, we had won the league.
I was going to say the Trent Masterclass match, as I vividly remember that. So yeah, no, that was definitely a good game for me. It was that Manchester United win because I think by then I was like, okay, I feel comfortable. So sorry, Chip, you were going to go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and that game was a Trent masterclass. I mean, and Jordan Henderson masterclass. But yeah, the Manchester United game, I think people remember because it's the first time that the Kop felt comfortable singing, "We're going to win the league." Because there had been pressure from Jurgen to look, there's a long way to go. But in my mind, having attended every game in person, I felt when Millie was stepping up there, if he puts this away, it's 2-0. I think that, as it did, because it ended up being 4-0, breaks Leicester. They resolved their will. And we took control of the game at that time. It was a wonderful performance, one of the best performances I've seen us do coming off a tough trip. That was the moment for me that we'd won the league.
I remember, I'm not a Liverpool fan personally, but I love watching the Liverpool games. We have a local group here in Omaha, OLSC Omaha, that gets 200 plus for any big game, to the point where the bar actually is expanding so they can fit more people in. And that's certainly, I think, really good for the growth of soccer in the United States. Same with FIFA and Football Manager, I think, was a really great way to bring casual fans into understanding soccer, because we don't have that ingrained soccer culture that you have in like South America or Europe or England. Do you think that the USL continuing to build out Championship and League One and bringing pro soccer to markets that wouldn't have pro soccer otherwise is going to be the next thing that really helps grow soccer and make soccer a more popular sport in the country?
Absolutely. Look, a rising tide lifts all boats. Here we are. I mean, look at everything, the confluence of everything that's happened in the last few years and will happen in the next few years. You've got, obviously, the Premier League and NBC doing a brilliant job in not only broadcasting the Premier League, but putting shoulder programming around it and taking it seriously. I mean, I've lived here long enough where commentators would talk down to you. It's a corner kick. Why is it a corner kick? Because the defender kicked it out last. Things of that nature. Now you've got commentary teams, production teams. NBC sends their teams over to England to broadcast live from the stadium. And the American fan doesn't need to explain what a goal kick, corner kick, penalty kick is, as they may have needed in the 70s and 80s. On top of that, you've got obviously the US women's national team in particular, but also the US men's national team showing progress. The women's national team have been superb for 2 decades, making the World Cup big deal for the men's national team in Qatar this year. And then you add to that the growth of MLS. And I was very involved in the inception of MLS when I was at Reebok in the early 90s as we were getting ready for the World Cup, but also at the same time, the commitment that was made by the United States Soccer Federation to FIFA that we will build our own professional league in return for getting off the back of the 1994 World Cup. And so, you know, in my instance, New England Revolution, we designed the logo, we designed the shirts, we were helping them get players. This is the Kraft family out of Foxborough. And you fast forward to where we are today, and the league, you know, MLS in particular, filling stadiums, soccer-specific stadiums, not repurposed NFL stadiums, top-class players coming over. Still, you know, players that are maybe not quite in their prime, but, you know, you've got not far from me an LAFC versus LA Galaxy, El Trafico, and you've got Chiellini, you've got obviously Gareth Bale just coming in. So you've got marquee players. And then you've got the World Cup coming in 2026. So you do have this rising tide that is amazing for me to experience in 40 years. You can throw Ted Lasso in there as well, if you like, but you've got all of this focus on the game. And you've also got this generational thing that I always used to talk about in the 80s in particular, when I was at Patrick and when I started to get involved in the Sporting Goods Association and became chairman of the Soccer Industry Council of America, was that the generation needs to come through having played it and having understood it and having fallen in love with it, and then have kids that they will then bring. The level of coaching when I first got here was abysmal. It was people like me with a foreign accent that were held in great regard, bizarrely, and we were the ones that would come in, as I did every summer from my teaching job, and coach American kids in the Midwest. Fast forward to where we are today. The standard of coaching is superb in just about every major community in this country. Here in Santa Barbara, not only a fully professional youth soccer club with professional coaches that have their licenses, and what you've got is this perfect storm. I think focus right now, if you will, on 2026 USL Championship, League One, even League Two. Obviously not full professional, but you've got what other countries have always had, which US really hadn't had, which is the classic pyramid. You've got the pathway from under 6 to professional. And that is the impetus for me getting a team going here, is that I can have the kids here say, I want to wake up in the morning, play for Santa Barbara Sky, and not for the Earthquakes, not for the Galaxy, and not for LAFC. And I've seen the power of what football does for a community, particularly living in Liverpool for those 3 years, and how it coalesces and brings together people during tough times, during a pandemic, during times of austerity, and having trouble putting food on the table. And so all of that, this beautiful game of ours, as I say, coalesces to bring everybody together. You don't need to speak the same language. You get a ball and 11 guys on each side or 11 girls on each side, and off you go. And you just need a couple of sweaters at either end and you're good to go.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to say, one of the things that I was wondering is, obviously you've mentioned it, your experience at Reebok, your experiences at Sega, at Xbox and EA. How much of that is going to need to be, how much do you think you're going to have to carry over that experience in terms of building not only potentially the squad, but also like the front office and kind of every aspect of this club, building it from scratch?
Well, yeah, I mean, the things you learn as you go through that, in particular my video game career, is mobilizing huge communities. I joined the video game industry in late 98, leaving Reebok. And again, you talk about your life. It's just one of those things. You get a call from a recruiter and what do you know about video games? absolutely nothing actually, but you're a sneaker marketer, and in those days, video games were very much what we'll call boys in their bedrooms. It was junior content. The consoles weren't powerful enough to drive next generation graphics, and it was a phase you went through. I mean, fast forward today, it's obviously completely different, but the ability for you to understand, a sport, a community, is critical. And in the world of video games, as everything went online, we had to manage, particularly Xbox Live, millions of, then tens of millions of people, and figure out ways to engage them. And ultimately, life in that world of video games, and in the world of where we're working now, in the world of sports, you think of it as an inverted funnel, and at the top it's acquisition. You got to go find your fans. You got to go find people that want to play your game, watch your game. You then have to engage them. I mean, it's one thing, particularly in the world of everything's free in the world of video games, but then you need engagement. And once you get down here, then the people you get deeply engaged, you have to monetize them to pay the bills. And that AEM, acquire, engage, monetize, in video games, and it's going to be no different in the world that we're looking at, in bringing our fans to the stadium and engaging us in, as we're doing right now, selling our merchandise and buying season tickets in advance through a simple deposit of putting their hand up and saying, I want to be a Santa Barbara Sky FC season ticket holder. So a lot of the stuff that I learned in video games certainly applied to Liverpool, where we've got this massive global fan base, and using technology, mobile applications, web, content, LFC TV, subscription services, deep engagement with the players each day on social media channels to keep people engaged 24/7 around the world. So same lessons apply to where we plan to go here in Santa Barbara. And in discussing with USL executives who have been incredibly supportive of what we're doing, same things apply to the league. We're kind of a challenger brand, if you will, in USL that sits underneath MLS. But you can do things that are more innovative and more interesting. And I'm seeing that best practices around the league at the championship level, League One level, and even at League Two level, where clubs are doing things. And I'm reaching out to my fellow owners and executives to learning best practice. And I can tell you, there's this no fear of cross-pollination of ideas, and no fear of sharing what works for you in a particular market. And that's the great thing I like about this league.
Yeah, it's super interesting because you have clubs with wildly different commercial strategies and player acquisition strategies and talent development strategies. What are some of the things you've seen around either League One or the league as a whole that you want to emulate with Santa Barbara Sky? And what are some things that you want to do differently than the rest of the league that you think could help innovate in the space?
The thing that, and I didn't need to look around the league to do this, is everything has got to be focused on the community, what the community wants, what the community needs, giving back to the community. Concurrently with the formation of the team, we will be developing our own charitable foundation, Fundación del Cielo, the Sky Foundation, that will help disadvantaged families in innovative ways here in Santa Barbara, albeit a relatively affluent community. Like any affluent community, it's got its families that service that community that struggle, and it's our job to use the platform of football. One of the things you learn, and certainly I learned at Liverpool, with the LFC Foundation, which has dozens of full-time employees, you walk into a classroom or onto a football pitch or into the back streets wearing that badge, and it garners attention. And we intend to do the same thing here in Santa Barbara with our charitable foundation, to concurrently play football, but also use football as a platform to do good, because it's a powerful, powerful platform that makes people sit up and pay attention. And so that, I think, is going to be key. And we're seeing more and more clubs utilize that. I'm a big fan of what Angel City FC is doing down here in Los Angeles. And I often joke with them that you're a social platform that happens to play football. You're so good at women's rights and the empowerment of women. You go up there in Oakland and what the Roots are doing, and the Soul, and all of the clubs that are really embracing what the community is all about. Not in there as a professional sports franchise and, pay us $30 to come and see you later. No, you can't do that. I look at Queensborough FC, and I was looking at their merchandise yesterday. I go, man, this is a fashion brand being built here. I mean, incredible. I don't know if you guys have looked at it, but it's cool stuff, right? And I'm absolutely enthralled with what they're doing and what are and we're selling merchandise already, and we're a long way from kicking a ball. So I think people want to be a part of something. Simplest way to do that is obviously wear a t-shirt or hoodie or a cap. But from the perspective of what can we do it more innovatively to drive attention, to drive revenue, to cover our costs, looks like merchandise that's well designed and attractively priced as well. It serves all of those purposes. So yeah, we're sharing best practices around the league. I'm reaching out either through league introductions or people I know myself, and this is, again, going back to my rising tide lifts all boats. This is the only way it happens. If you're shut down and don't talk to anybody and it's all about competition, it will not work. It simply will not work.
Peter, I want to ask you this question. And pretty much you're building a club in a state that is notorious with soccer here in America. It's one of the hotbeds of soccer. One, how do you get people to not only care about your club and feel like invested in it, because you're going up against people, not going against people, but you have clubs in competing areas as Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, Fresno, San Jose. But then also, like, how do you make sure that the fan experience is something to which they want to come back to, that they want to enjoy? Because literally your stadium is probably one of the most beautiful stadiums in the league where it sits at. How do you get fans to come back and be like, hey, we're more than just this fashion brand, or more than just this beautiful ocean setting on the sea? And I'm pretty sure when the sunsets hit on a 6 o'clock or 10:30 game here in the East Side, it's going to look amazing. How do you get people to care?
Well, you have to. I mean, when you get them invested, you bring them in, you make them feel part of the club rather than a customer or just a pure fan. We're working through that now. Social media is an amazing tool to do that as well. And my daughter Alex, who actually lives in Liverpool, is helping us out. And right now we're pretty much a bunch of volunteers who love the game and are very involved in the soccer community here and know what it will do. California for me has always been, a little bit of a challenge. On the upside, you're exactly right. I mean, here in Santa Barbara, you can be outside 340 days a year. I mean, the weather is that good. It's built for outdoors. The flip side, as I learned when I moved here in 1980, is there's so much other stuff to do. And when I first got here, you've got all of these professional sports teams. But if the sun's shining and the beach is calling, how do you compete with that? And that's what you have to learn to do. You've got to build allegiances. Look, when I first came to America, I knew I needed to learn indigenous American sports. I didn't want to be that Brit that was just in the Georgian Dragon in Santa Monica drinking warm beer, complaining about whatever sport he or she didn't understand. And I became an LA Rams fan. I deliberately became an LA Rams fan. And this is the original LA Rams. This is Jim Everett, Eric Dickinson. It's like, and then I wake up one day and they're in St. Louis. And so the same time, I would spend as a sales rep, and this is probably 1983, coming back down from this area to Long Beach where I lived, and would stop off at Chavez Ravine and watch the Dodgers on $1 Wednesdays and learn baseball. I mean, but what I also learned is, cliched with the Dodgers, everybody's showing up in the middle or the top of the second and leaving in the bottom of the seventh, depending on the score, because they've been seen, they've seen, and they've moved on. It's the challenge of California. It's the upside of California, but it's also a little bit of a downside. There's so much else that people can be doing, and the weather is so good. And you're right, we're right on the beach with the stadium. Well, they could be right on that beach rather than watching a soccer game. That's something we recognize and we've got plans for, but you've got to get people invested. You've got to get people like I was as a kid. By Wednesday, all you can wait for is Saturday to come. And, in my instance, that's all we had as kids was our football on a Saturday. It was school and football, So from that perspective, that's our goal over the next 18 months, to get people fully invested, which I believe we will.
Talking
I was
about
gonna say,
memes,
just do your player announcements. Just have the beach background every time you do a player announcement. Just have that, and that'll always be enticing for players to be like, that would be pretty nice.
yeah,
You pay for housing, right? Yeah, I'll be there.
Okay. Peter, I want to ask you this question as well, man. Doing a little bit of research about you, come to find out you actually played the game as well for one club, Gresford Athletic.
Cresford,
Also,
yeah.
you're also honorary president. How do you think that experience of having a lower league club that you're honorary president for is going to transition to help you running a USL League One club here in America?
Yeah, I mean, you look back on those days, and you know, you're probably talking 40 years ago when I'm playing for Gresford. We played in the Welsh National League. It was the tough days. I'm in the 70s. You got mud up to your ankles by November. It's hard tackling. This is pre-shin guard mandatory. All of those things. And but I probably played a couple of hundred games for Gresford, and you know, was captain of the team. I think I made my debut at 15 and a half years of age. And I look back fondly at those days because I referred to this earlier on, you know, when we started talking, is it sculpts you as a human being to play for a team, to get into those tackles, you know, when it's coming down rain, it's thick with mud, you are freezing. This is in the days of cotton uniforms, of boots that weighed, you know, twice as much when you finished than when you went on the pitch. Balls that would gain weight at times because they were natural leather, all of that. And I can still feel that cold, feel that wet, feel that rain. But those days helped mold me. And I was fortunate enough then the club is still playing even at a higher level than when I played, to come back and help them, for example, pay for infrastructure and to help contribute towards the payment of a new stand. All of that. And they clearly remember me, and you know, went back and once I was CEO at Liverpool Football Club, and went back and spoke to the club and to the players about my experiences. And look, if you haven't played team sports, then you know you probably don't know what I'm referring to. But this concept of esprit de corps and doing things for the benefit of the midfielder in front of you or the winger down the line, and making that run, making that tackle, you know, for 90 minutes, that helps mold you. And so I'm delighted still to be involved with Gresford. My family, my brothers and sisters still live within a couple of miles of the pitch from which I played. It's a far better looking pitch than I ever played on 40 something years ago. And I'm proud it's still there. And yes, it helped enormously in the molding of my character, and in my career of being part of a team that was a good team and a good league, Welsh National League Division 1.
I mean, that's great to hear, man. Like, it's not too often that you hear guys that play in the lower league, but like, you know what? Now I'm going to become honorary president. I'm going to own a club with a great skyline and a beach behind it. Pretty awesome.
I was gonna say, this gives me an idea for a football manager save now. I might have to take him over now and do it.
There you go. I mean, Peter, let's kind of transition back to Santa Barbara Sky FC. Talking about the men's and women's team, are you starting to think now what you wanted as a coach? Like, what are those steps looking like? Player recruitment? How are you looking to kind of start molding this team to have an on the field product?
Well, it's for us, you know, this is it's like, you know, the question people would pose: how do you eat an elephant? Well, you do it one bite at a time, and we're eating an elephant right now, and you've got to figure out what you need when you need it. You know, I'm writing checks for everything we need to build out the club, the infrastructure. We'll start thinking about that in the spring of next year. You know, we're not going to obviously commence play until March of 2024. It's premature to sign players too early if you have to, you know, because they can't play, and if you have to pay them and house them, as the point that was made there. So you've got to phase your timing of your recruitment. You obviously would start with a head coach and maybe a sporting director. And so from that perspective, You would then build on top of that and let that coach start to build his or her staff, and the same with the sporting director. And then you build infrastructure in and around them, which probably will already be there. Head of marketing, operations, liaison with stadium officials, all of the things you have to do to put in place. But you have to be careful because you've got no revenue coming in. And from the perspective of when we start playing, we're very confident. We're already having conversations with sponsors and advertisers. The local community, since we announced a week last Tuesday, has been phenomenally supportive. And I'm finding more and more time, people saying, can I talk to you? I want to get involved. How does my company get involved? I've also got LinkedIn messages from 100 coaches, to your point. So it's like, as we say in Liverpool, gives a job. And so I'm trying to manage that at the same time. So it's all about phasing. It's all about, hiring the right people at the optimal time to do the job you need without getting them in too early or too late, and planning out your cost basis before you bring in revenue.
So I want to ask you this question. I hope I'm not pivoting too far. I know it's too early to sign players and whatnot. But when you're looking at building this roster with, the coaches you're going to hire and the, GM, are you guys looking? Oh, well, not looking, but would it be that thought he had of like go make the big splashy signing to get players in? Because for those who can't see it, this stadium is like less than a mile away from a yacht club. So we know, we talked about like keeping the people interest. Are you guys going to go? I don't know, get someone like James Miller or Virgil van Dijk when he decides I'm going to leave Liverpool and be like, hey, come play for us again to make that big signing? Or is it going to be more of let's kind of go into the community, build these local roots by getting guys that they, played in this area or things like that?
Look, I mean, and it's too premature even to answer that question, but ultimately what you hope is like back at the Liverpool team of the 80s and 90s, there was 4 or 5 Liverpudlians playing at winning Champions League and European Cups. The Robbie Fowlers, the Jamie Carragers, the Steve McManamans, all of these players born and bred, like Trent Alexander-Arnold is now, born and bred within a mile of the training ground, within a mile of Anfield itself. So you do hope you have that core of local players. We will have here in Santa Barbara. At the same time, it would be a stretch to say we can put 11 homegrown players on the pitch at any given time. I'm sure we can't. And you do need that. Maybe you get older players, younger players coming through. You've got to balance your salaries and all of that stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it will be decisions that will be made commencing in 2023 of how we go about this.
Yeah. And my last question about the stadium is just this, like, what went into your decision making of having this stadium be the given choice for the club to play at? Did you guys look at other places, or once you saw it, you were like, this is the spot, this is it?
Yeah, I mean, what you're looking at in that Google, satellite map there is to the right, not a yacht club. That's a working harbor. That's the harbor that every local and tourist knows. It's a great harbor, but it's a working harbor. Yes. Are there yachts there? You bet. In the center there is the stadium. It's Santa Barbara City College. It's La Playa Stadium. It sits in, to your point, an amazing location. It's got some work, and we're going to invest with the City College in doing some work on the stadium to make it a little bit more soccer friendly, if you will. But to your point, you can see the beach, you can see the ocean. It's in a superb location. And perhaps most importantly, which is a little off camera from that photograph, you're within walking distance of downtown as well, State Street and places like that, 10-minute walk easily before or after the game. And so it will bring a vibrancy on a Saturday night to Santa Barbara, on top of what we already have, which is a very, it's a college town, it's a tourist town. People, you say Santa Barbara to people and they smile because they have this vision, even if they haven't been here, of this, what it is, beautiful south-facing California seaside town, as we would call it in England. And so when you looked at that and working with our partners at Santa Barbara City College, it was, for me, an obvious choice. Again, work to be done, investment to be made, But we'll make this happen here, and we got plenty of time to do so right now.
Yeah, and that I was going to say, I know you mentioned talking to other clubs in the California area. Have you had a chance to talk to other owners or front office people in USL League One teams, whether it is current ones or something like a Spokane or Fort Wayne that are joining later on?
Yeah, look, I was fortunate enough to be able to take a couple of days last December to go to the annual meetings in Tampa and got to meet a number of people. This is before we really kicked off, in full speed to get the team up and running and launched. So I built those relationships. The league is very good and very proactive at introducing me and people who are working on the Santa Barbara Sky Football Club to their counterparts around the league. Again, it's a rising tide lifting all boats. You can't, at this league level, just shut down your shop and put the drawbridge up and not talk to anybody and just be competitors. You really have to work together to lift the league to where it needs to be so that we all benefit. It's a commune, not necessarily just a football a competition for 90 minutes every week on the pitch. You've absolutely, and maybe it's different. Even in the Premier League, that is the way. We share best practices. We know each other. We respect each other. If there are issues, we will call each other. There's no different. And I'm sure at the highest level of American leagues, the NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, I'm sure the same thing happens.
Even Everton?
Even Everton.
Man United. See, you did delay that one. See, okay. All right.
I always forget that you're a Man United fan, Yogi. Not so much anymore, but
Peter, one last question. I want to ask you this. As you know, there's another team in California, Central Valley Fuego FC. Has that kind of competition and rivalry kind of started there? I know we're 2 years away from this club launching, but has it kind of already got those vibes of like, we're coming?
Now go look at Santa Barbara on the map. Go look at Fresno on the map and just figure out. I mean, if it was if this was Liverpool Everton, 900 yards away from each other, it might be a different story. Now we're a long way from building rivalries. Rivalries come after 2 or 3 matches on the pitch where you see it as a local derby. It's far from a local derby, albeit it obviously within California, but it's not like it's down the street.
Probably the most local derby in USL League One, I think, at this point.
I was going to say, the league will definitely promote it as a derby coming. Once you get started, they're going to make it. They're going to make it one.
They're promoting NOCO and Fuego as a rivalry already too.
Yeah, and look, what you want ultimately is that we have in MLS, which is you go particularly in the Pacific Northwest. You look at Vancouver, Seattle, Portland. Now there's some rivalries. There's some bad blood, and that goes all the way back to NASL. And so when you have the history and legacy, and those are great rivalries with great traditions. And look, 10 years from now, you're right. One of the things that I would hope we focused on the league is not only having Fresno, but San Diego, Orange County, LA, obviously Santa Barbara, where we can build, a West Coast rivalry of derby matches that people will relish. You're already getting it with LAFC and the Galaxy, El Tráfico. And so from that perspective, it won't take long for us to get those rivalries going in USL League One.
I guess, Peter, we're kind of rounding out to the end. So as we do with every guest to come to the show, we ask you a couple, I think it's 3 or 4 questions, just so we can, end the show on a good note. So the first question is, what is your pre-match meal? We've heard some weird ones. We want to hear what yours is.
Pre-match when I was a player, or pre-match when I'm in my suit and tie in the director's box?
Both.
Up to your interpretation.
When I was a player, nutrition was not quite understood to the level that it is today. And an unfortunate incident, September 10th, 1977, my pregame ritual was a Mars bar, if you're familiar with a Mars bar, because the belief then was, sugar that come in quickly, get into your system, give you that energy. That was great till I broke my leg 9 minutes into the game and was taken to the hospital and had to tell the doctor. He said, "If you had anything to eat, because we need to put you under general anesthetic. And I said, well, I've just, only 40 minutes ago had a Mars bar. I said, well, I can't knock you out. Your stomach is full. So they reset the leg without anesthetic, which is a moment I'll never forget. But and so I stopped doing that. You then started to think a little bit more nutrition wise, and you'd have a banana or something like that. In the old days, the players would tell you it was steak and French fries, for lunch. And I certainly could never play with anything in my stomach. So there was no pre-game meal for me. Certainly, I'm CEO of Liverpool Football Club. That pre-game meal in the director's box in the boardroom is a whole different thing. And that was superb food that got us ready to walk outside, usually in sub-freezing temperatures, to be ready for what was always a very entertaining 90 minutes.
Okay. Kyle,
I was going to say, the weirdest one we've had is peanut butter and tuna.
Yeah, that was weird.
Much like your experience, there's a player from North Carolina FC who last year was mostly like a bunch of youth players. They weren't that great, but they had some like absolute firecracker players. And we find out like their best player last year would literally eat like a bag of peanut butter M&Ms before going on the pitch for a game. So this year they hired a nutritionist and have a pregame meal. So like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to take this seriously.
Yeah.
You watch players now with goo. They come on and they've got the sachets that as they're warming up to be subbed, you see it, and they'll hit themselves with goo, which will give you that energy pretty instantly. It's, if you've never had it, it's in a sachet. You suck it out, and it's just concentrated sugar basically, but it'll hit your system quickly.
Mm-hmm. I got another question for you. In your time at Liverpool, CEO, who is one player that you felt like you could play up against in your time if you were a player still? I hope that makes sense.
Well, I was a right fullback, so and typically in those days, it was right fullback versus the left winger. In NFL terms, it's cornerback versus wide receiver. It's mano a mano. So it would always have to be somebody, and I would hated to have played. There's no player I can think that I could match up with, and the players that I thought would destroy me, like a Luis Suarez or a Sadio Mane. These are players I would, every time I would watch Suarez play, I always in my head say, "Oh my God, I would have absolutely hated to play against him," because a brilliant player, a street fighter, everything that, and some amazing goals, but would fight you to the death whether the ball was there or not. And I just loved him for that. Same with Sadio Mane, who would drift in, and I would be up against the Sadio Mane in my position, but you never knew where he was going to be at any given time. And his strength for a guy who's, I don't know, 5'8", maybe, is amazing. And knocking him off the ball was almost impossible. So yeah, there's nobody that I could have said, oh yeah, I could have handled him.
Did you ever go up to Trent and be like, "Hey, I used to play right back. So I can still do it."
Yeah. Word of advice as an executive: that's the last thing you want to do with the players. Yeah.
Fair. One question I wanted to add two questions. The first one: what has been the best stadium that you have visited? So outside of Anfield, what's been the best stadium that you've gone to and watched a match at?
I think
whether
within
it's
England,
as CEO of Liverpool or as a fan.
I think within England, and it depends on best. I mean, you have this. What are the facilities like? It's tough for me because I would come into the director's box as guests of the chairman of the opposing team. Spurs' new stadium is spectacular. But stadiums we used to go to that I would love for the atmosphere would be places like Selhurst Park, Crystal Palace. That and you go up to Newcastle United, St. James's Park. These are hardcore stadiums, hardcore fan groups, and you would love going there and competing, and most of the time, hopefully winning. Those were there. There are other stadiums where you just, for a lot of reasons, you just didn't particularly care to go to. And look, from the perspective, and every fan will tell you this, from the perspective of the rivalry between Liverpool and Manchester United, never really relished going to Old Trafford. It's just a tough environment. Where we sat in the director's box, the fans were right there. So it's a tense 90 minutes there. But loved going down to London to play away at Crystal Palace, and loved going up to Newcastle to play against Newcastle United at St James's Park, or whatever sports or whatever they happen to call it in the latest day.
Yeah, nice. And then the other question I have, and I felt like I had to ask this as a Liverpool fan: have you gotten a hug from Jurgen Klopp, and if so, what is that like?
I've had many hugs from Jurgen Klopp. They're warm, they're cuddly. It's like a cocoon. You melt into him. Yeah, no, Jurgen is tremendous. The physicality he has, which he uses for man management, is amazing. And he is as tactile a human being as you'll find. He uses his physical presence as an asset, and he will encourage every player, regardless of whether they've had a good game or not. And you watch it on the sidelines. If he 9 times out of 10, he's going to give you a hug when you come off, and you better accept it and reciprocate. And sometimes players come off in a bit of a huff, as we would say in England. And if they don't reciprocate with the hug, then I'm sure there's words afterwards in the locker room, in the dressing room.
I am very happy to know that it is warm and everything. So those are my questions. Chip, I don't know if you have any last questions.
No, just again, thanks so much for coming on. If you make it to Omaha for a game before you kick off, I know a couple hundred people that would love to buy you a beer.
Same with Madison.
One of the great things about my role at Liverpool is that I've probably visited 16, 17 of those OLSCs around the world. And, we're interestingly trying to get OLSC status here in Santa Barbara. We're building our own Liverpool supporters club here in sleepy Santa Barbara. And I think we're about to get that for next season. Fingers crossed.
All right.
Perfect.
All right. Well, Peter, man, we just want to thank you once again for taking the time out of your day. We'll let you go out there and enjoy the warm beaches of Santa Barbara and everything like that.
I got to go back to work, guys. I got a day job.
It is only like 1 o'clock over there.
That's exactly right. Yeah, got to get back to my day job. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the hour together, and appreciate your support for Santa Barbara Sky FC. And we're excited to be a part of USL League One in March of 2024.
No problem. Thank you so much, Peter. Listeners, we will holler at you guys next Thursday at our normal time of 9-ish. Follow us on YouTube at Walking 90. See you guys later. Peace.